stepped out of the Uber, the San Francisco night air sharp against my skin, my black dress hugging me like a secret I wasn't ready to tell. The rooftop gala at the top of the Meridian Tower glittered above, a constellation of wealth and ambition, the Golden Gate Bridge a distant red glow in the fog. Cassie's 35th birthday party, my sister, the golden child, the one who always got the spotlight while I learned to live in the shadows. I adjusted my clutch, took a breath, and walked toward the entrance, my heels clicking against the pavement. I wasn't here to play the dutiful sister. I was here to change the game. The doorman barely glanced at me. "Deliveries go around back," he barked, pointing to a service alley reeking of garbage and diesel. My stomach twisted, but I forced a smile, the kind you learn when you've been dismissed your whole life. "I'm a guest," I said, holding up my phone, the QR code invite glowing. He squinted, muttered something under his breath, and waved me through. But as I stepped into the glass elevator, rising 40 stories above the city, I felt the weight of it, the assumption I didn't belong. It wasn't new, it was just louder tonight. The doors slid open, and the rooftop was a fever dream of excess. White linen tables draped in gold, champagne towers catching the light, a string quartet weaving Vivaldi into the hum of laughter. Tech moguls, influencers, and venture capitalists swirled around Cassie, her Versace gown shimmering like she'd been poured into it. She was the sun, and everyone else was just orbiting. I scanned the crowd for a familiar face. My parents, maybe, or our cousin Liam, but no one looked my way. Not yet. A server in a crisp black vest approached, balancing a tray of crab cakes. "Ma'am, could you move? You're blocking the catering station." I blinked, realizing I'd been steered toward a corner near a dumpster, a folding chair shoved against a leaking ice bucket. My dress was already damp, the silk clinging to my thigh. I sat, the metal creaking under me, and felt the old ache bloom. Invisible. My parents, Margaret and Richard Harper, stood across the rooftop, clinking glasses with a venture capitalist, their laughter sharp as broken glass. They hadn't even said hello. Cassie took the stage, a microphone in one hand, a flute of champagne in the other. The crowd hushed, hanging on her every word. "Tonight's about celebration," she said, her voice honeyed, practiced. "About dreaming big, living bold, and never settling for less." She paused, her eyes sweeping the crowd, landing on me for a fraction of a second. "And let's not forget my little sister, Ellie, who's always been so good at staying out of the spotlight." The crowd erupted in laughter, a cruel, careless wave. A glass slipped from a server's tray, shattering on the slate floor, the sound slicing through me. My smile tightened, but behind it, I was bleeding pride. I leaned forward, my fingers curling around my clutch. "You have no idea who I am," I thought, "but you will." I wasn't just Ellie Harper, the quiet sister who faded into the background. I was E.H., the phantom founder of Apex Ventures, the tech conglomerate that owned Cassie's startup, her stage, her spotlight. I'd built it in the dark, under a pseudonym, while they all assumed I was a data analyst answering phones in some cubicle. I owned the contracts they signed, the budgets they spent, the dreams they chased, and tonight I was done being their punchline. The laughter died down, and Cassie floated back to her admirers, her gold sash catching the fairy lights. I stayed seated, the ice bucket dripping onto my sleeve, and scanned the crowd. That's when I heard it. A low, urgent voice from the table behind me. "EH is the key," a man muttered. "If we get those shares, Apex is ours." My pulse spiked. EH, my pseudonym. I turned slightly, catching the profile of Cassie's CFO, Greg Tanner. His tie loosened, his phone pressed to his ear. "The takeover's set for Monday. She won't see it coming." My breath caught. A takeover. My company. My empire. I slipped my hand into my clutch, pulling out a burner phone, my fingers moving fast to record his words. But I needed more. I needed proof. Tanner patted his jacket pocket, a faint bulge where a USB drive might sit, evidence of the deal. I stood, smoothing my dress, and weaved through the crowd, my heart hammering. The dance floor pulsed with bodies, the DJ dropping a bass-heavy remix. I brushed past Tanner, my hand grazing his jacket, lifting the drive with a sleight of hand I'd learned in college, back when I thought pickpocketing was just a party trick. His eyes flicked toward me, but I was already gone, melting into the crowd, the drive burning a hole in my palm. I slipped toward the rooftop's edge, the city sprawling below, and tucked the drive into my clutch. But before I could exhale, a heavy hand gripped my arm. "Who the hell are you?" A voice slurred. I turned to face a red-faced investor, his breath sour with whiskey. "You don't belong here. Crashing my friend's party?" He shoved me hard, and I stumbled, my back hitting the low glass railing. 40 stories down, the streetlights blurred, my heels skidded, and, for a moment, I saw myself falling, the wind swallowing my scream. "I'm Ellie Harper," I said, steadying myself, my voice sharper than I felt. "Ask Nathan Cole. He'll vouch for me." The investor blinked, his aggression faltering at the mention of Apex's CEO. He muttered an apology and staggered off, but my legs were shaking. My anonymity was a shield, but it was cracking. I needed to move faster. I pulled out my phone, checking for alerts, and froze. A text from an unknown number. "I know your EH $5.00, and by midnight, or your family learns the truth." My throat tightened. Someone here at this party was watching me. I scanned the crowd, my eyes landing on a bartender wiping down a counter, his gaze lingering too long. I tapped my smartwatch, tracing the text's signal. It pinged back to the bar. I moved toward him, my pulse a drumbeat. The bar was tucked in a corner, shadowed by a neon sign. "We need to talk," I said, leaning close. His name tag read Jake. He smirked, but his eyes were cold. "Not here," he hissed, nodding toward a storage closet behind the bar. I followed, my hand slipping into my clutch, fingers brushing the taser I always carried. Inside the closet, the air was thick with the smell of bleach and spilled wine. "You sent the text," I said, my voice low. "What do you want?" Jake's smirk vanished. "I know you run Apex. I saw the filings. Pay me, or I tell everyone." He pulled a knife, the blade catching the dim light. My heart lurched, but I was ready. I lunged, my taser crackling as it hit his wrist. He yelped, the knife clattering to the floor, and I kicked it away, my breath ragged. "You're done," I said, binding his hands with a zip tie from my clutch. I left him there, locked in, and slipped back into the party, my hands trembling but my resolve ironclad. I'd deal with him later. Right now I had bigger threats. My smartwatch buzzed again, this time with an alert from Apex's servers. Security breach detected. Data exposure imminent. A cyber attack. Now. I ducked behind a potted palm, pulling up my phone to access the venue's Wi-Fi. My fingers flew, rerouting the attack, but a security guard loomed over me. "Ma'am, what are you doing?" he demanded, his hand on his radio. "Fixing a guest's phone," I lied, flashing a smile. "Dropped it in the champagne tower. Disaster, right?" He hesitated, then nodded, walking away. I exhaled. The attack neutralized, but my anonymity was hanging by a thread. I needed a moment to think, to breathe, but the universe wasn't that kind. I spotted my father's coat slung over a chair, a corner of paper peeking out. I reached for it, my fingers brushing a contract. My signature, forged, funneling Apex funds to Cassie's failing startup. My blood ran cold. Richard had betrayed me, used my name, my company, to prop up his favorite daughter. I stuffed the contract into my clutch and headed for the stairwell, knowing he'd be there, sneaking a cigar like always. I found him on the landing, the smoke curling around his face. "Ellie," he said, surprised, his voice dripping with condescension, "shouldn't you be fetching drinks?" I held up the contract. "You forged my signature, stole from my company." His eyes narrowed, but he didn't deny it. "It's for family," he said, stepping closer. "You wouldn't understand ambition." I stood my ground. but he moved faster, locking the fire exit behind me. "Stay out of this," he hissed, and then I smelled smoke. Real smoke, rising from below, a kitchen fire. My lungs burned as I pounded on the door, but it wouldn't budge. Panic clawed at me, but I spotted a window, its latch rusted. I smashed it with my heel, glass shattering, cutting my hand as I climbed out onto a ledge. The night air hit me like a slap, but I was alive. I made it back to the rooftop, my hand bleeding, my dress torn, but the party hadn't noticed. Cassie was at the center of it all, her laughter ablade. Then the slideshow started, a giant screen flickering to life. Photos of Cassie, her Stanford graduation, her TED Talk, her magazine covers, and then a doctored image of me, 16 and awkward, tripping at a school dance, captioned, "Always in the background." The crowd roared, and something in me snapped. I pulled out my phone, hacked the projector, and replaced the slideshow with Apex's latest valuation, $2 billion, 0 cents, my initials EH embedded in the logo. The laughter stopped. Whispers started. Cassie's smile faltered, and for the first time, I saw fear in her eyes. I stood there, blood dripping from my hand, the city lights sprawling below, and felt the shift. They didn't know me yet, but they would. I was Eleanor Harper, and I was done hiding. The envelope in my clutch held the truth, contracts, emails, proof of everything. I wasn't ready to open it, not tonight, but as I looked across the rooftop at the faces now watching me, I knew one thing. The invisible sister was about to rewrite the story. The rooftop gala pulsed on, oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. The San Francisco skyline glittered below, a sprawl of ambition and betrayal, but up here, the air was thick with champagne and lies. My hand throbbed, blood seeping through the makeshift bandage I'd torn from my dress, the glass shards from the stairwell window still fresh in my mind. The USB drive in my clutch felt heavier than it should, a ticking bomb of secrets about a takeover that could dismantle Apex Ventures, my empire, built in the shadows while my family laughed. Cassie's slideshow still burned in my memory, that doctored photo of me tripping, captioned to mock. But the whispers had started now, sparked by my hack of the projector, Apex's $2 billion, 0 cents valuation, flashing with my initials, EH. They didn't know me yet, but the cracks in their curated world were spreading. I was Eleanor Harper, and I was done playing invisible. I slipped through the crowd, my torn dress catching on a table's edge, the damp silk clinging to my skin. My smartwatch buzzed, a faint vibration against my wrist. Another alert from Apex's servers. Secondary breach attempt detected. Origin internal. My stomach dropped. Someone inside my company, someone here maybe, was still trying to expose me. I scanned the rooftop, eyes darting from Cassie's glittering posse to my parents' tight smiles, to the bartender I'd left zip-tied in the storage closet, the blackmail text from earlier, "I know your EH $5 0 cents M by midnight," echoed in my head. Jake, the bartender, wasn't working alone. This was bigger, messier, and I was running out of time. I needed a quiet corner to think, to trace the breach. I moved toward a shadowed alcove near the bar, the neon sign flickering above, casting jagged light across my face. My fingers flew over my phone, pulling up Apex's security dashboard. The breach was sophisticated, targeting my encrypted ownership files. Whoever it was knew exactly where to look. I rerouted the attack, my heart pounding, but a voice cut through my focus. "Ellie, darling, why are you hiding?" My mother, Margaret, stood there, her pearl necklace gleaming, her smile as sharp as a blade. "Come sit with us. You look disheveled." I tucked my phone away, forcing a nod. "Just catching my breath, Mom." Her eyes flicked to my bandaged hand, but she didn't ask. She never did. Instead, she gestured toward a table near the stage where Cassie was holding court, her laughter a polished performance. Cassandra's about to give another toast. You wouldn't want to miss it." The invitation was a trap, a way to parade me as the dutiful sister, the one who never complained. I followed, my flats silent against the slate floor, knowing I couldn't refuse without drawing attention. Not yet. The table was a microcosm of my family's world. My father, Richard, nursing a whiskey, his tie loose. Our cousin Liam, a junior exec at Apex, scrolling his phone with a smirk, and a handful of Cassie's sycophants, their eyes glued to her. I took the offered seat, a wobbly chair too close to the catering station, the smell of shrimp cocktail mingling with my damp dress. Margaret leaned in, her voice low. "You should thank Cassandra for inviting you, Ellie. It's a big night for her." I bit back a laugh. Thank her? For seating me by a dumpster? For mocking me in front of 200 people? But I nodded, my smile a mask, and waited. Cassie climbed the stage again, her gold sash catching the fairy lights. "To family," she said, raising her glass, her voice dripping with false warmth. "To those who lift us up, and those who, well, keep things running in the background." Her eyes locked on mine, the crowd chuckling. My fingers tightened around my glass, the stem cool against my palm. She was baiting me, testing how far she could push before I snapped. I didn't. Not yet. But I felt the weight of the manila envelope in my clutch. Proof of her lies, her stolen campaigns, her failing startup propped up by my father's fraud. One move, and I could end her. Before I could decide, a new threat emerged. Nathan Cole, Apex's CEO, stepped onto the rooftop, his navy suit cutting through the crowd like a shark through water. Cassie gasped, whispering to a friend, "That's my boss. What's he doing here?" My pulse spiked. Nathan knew I was EH, the Phantom founder, but we'd agreed to keep it quiet. His presence was a wild card, a risk I hadn't planned for. He moved with purpose, past the champagne tower, past Cassie's outstretched hand, and stopped 2 feet from me. "Madam Harper," he said, his voice low, removing his mirrored sunglasses. "Didn't expect to see you here." The air shifted. Cassie's smile froze. Liam's phone slipped from his hand, clattering onto the table. Margaret's pearls clicked as she turned, her eyes narrowing. Nathan's use of madam wasn't an accident. It was a signal, a crack in my anonymity. I kept my voice even. "Didn't expect you either, Nathan. Business or pleasure?" He leaned closer, his words for me alone. "The Morgan acquisition's heating up. We need to talk. I can give you a ride after." I nodded, my mind racing. The Morgan deal was a $500 million 0-cents play, one I'd orchestrated from the shadows. If Nathan was here, it meant trouble. Cassie recovered, her laugh too loud. "Ellie, you know Nathan? How quaint." She stepped between us, her perfume sharp. "Let's not bore him with small talk. He's here for me, right?" Nathan didn't blink. "Actually, I'm here for business." He nodded to me, then moved toward the bar, leaving Cassie blinking, her champagne flute trembling. The crowd murmured, recalculating. I felt their eyes on me, the invisible sister suddenly visible, and it was both thrilling and terrifying. I needed to move. The breach alert, Nathan's arrival, the USB drive, it was all closing in. I excused myself, slipping toward the dessert table where I could think without Margaret's scrutiny, but Liam followed, his smirk gone, replaced by something sharper. "Ellie," he said, his voice low, "I saw you at the last board meeting. You're not just a data analyst, are you?" My heart stopped. Liam, the cousin I'd written off as a ladder climber, had connected the dots. I forced a laugh. "You're imagining things, Liam. Too much wine." He stepped closer, his breath hot. "Don't play dumb. I want in. Promote me or I tell Cassie everything." My mind raced. Liam was a loose cannon, ambitious but sloppy. I could crush him, but not here, not now. "Let's talk later," I said, buying time. "Meet me at the office tomorrow." He nodded, satisfied, but I was already planning. I'd feed him a fake project, let him pitch it to Nathan, and watch him crash. One less threat. I reached the dessert table, my hand shaking as I grabbed a macaron, the sugar a brief distraction. But the night wasn't done with me. A woman in a sleek red dress approached, her phone discreetly angled toward me. "Ellie Harper, right?" she said, her voice too smooth. "I'm Lauren Tate, TechCrunch. I'm doing a piece on Apex's mystery owner. Care to comment?" My blood ran cold. A journalist, here, boarding me. I smiled, my voice light. "You've got the wrong Harper. I'm just here for the cake." She didn't buy it, her eyes narrowing, but before she could press, I accidentally knocked a glass of Merlot onto her phone. "Oh, I'm so sorry," I said as the screen fizzed out. She cursed, scrambling to save it, and I slipped away, my heart pounding. Another bullet dodged, but the clip was running low. I needed to regroup, but the rooftop was a minefield. Cassie was back on stage retelling her CEO mindset story, claiming credit for a campaign I'd killed for being unoriginal. My anger flared, hot and sharp. I caught Nathan's eye across the crowd, his nod, subtle but clear. "Do it now?" I shook my head, my fingers brushing the manila envelope. "Not yet." I placed it on the dessert table, its weight a promise. Cassie spotted it, her voice faltering mid-sentence. "What's that?" she called, her tone forced bright. I didn't raise my voice. "Proof," I said, and let the word hang. She stepped off the stage, her heels clicking, and stopped inches from me. "Proof of what, Ellie? Your jealousy?" Her voice was loud enough for the nearby tables to hear, drawing eyes. I smiled, calm as a lake before a storm. "Then why are you shaking?" Her hand twitched, her flute tilting, and for a moment I thought she'd lunge, but the crowd was watching, recalculating, and she knew it. She scoffed, turning back to her guests, but the damage was done, the narrative was slipping. Then came the next blow. My smartwatch buzzed again, this time with a text from an unknown number. "Check the coat room. You're not the only one with secrets." My pulse spiked. Another threat, another move on the board. I moved toward the coat room, a glass-walled nook near the elevator, my senses on high alert. Inside, I found a burner phone taped under a shelf, its screen glowing with a single file. A photo of me, 10 years ago, signing my first Apex contract under my pseudonym. My real name was circled in red. Someone had been digging, someone close. I pocketed the phone, my mind racing. Who? Cassie? Liam? My father? I didn't have time to process. A scream cut through the music, sharp and raw. The crowd parted, and I saw her. A server, young, maybe 20, clutching her arm, blood seeping through her sleeve. "He attacked me," she cried, pointing to the storage closet where I'd left Jake. My stomach lurched. Had he escaped? I pushed through the crowd, ignoring Margaret's gasp, and reached the closet. The door was ajar, Jake gone, the zip tie cut. The server's eyes met mine, wide with fear. "He said he'd kill me if I talked," she whispered. "He knew you." My blood ran cold. Jake wasn't just a blackmailer. He was connected, dangerous, and now he was loose. I helped the server to a chair, signaling a medic, but my mind was elsewhere. I needed to find him, to stop him before he blew my cover. But as I turned, I saw Cassie watching, her expression unreadable. Was she involved? Had she hired him? The questions piled up, each one a weight. Nathan appeared beside me, his voice low. "We need to move. The Morgan deal's at risk, and this," he gestured to the chaos, "is a distraction." I nodded, my resolve hardening. I couldn't stay here, playing defense. I needed to take control. "Get me to the office," I said. "Now." We moved toward his Tesla, parked at the curb. But as we reached the elevator, Liam blocked our path. "Going somewhere, Ellie?" he said, his smirk back. "I just emailed Nathan my pitch. You're not the only one with moves." I didn't flinch. "Good luck with that," I said, knowing his pitch, fed by my false intel, would tank. But his confidence unnerved me. He knew more than he should. The elevator doors closed, and Nathan turned to me. "You're playing a dangerous game, Ellie. How long can you keep this up? I didn't answer. I didn't. We reached the street, the Tesla's hum a stark contrast to the gala's chaos. I slid into the passenger seat, my clutch heavy with the USB drive, the burner phone, the envelope. Nathan drove, the city blurring past, but my mind was still on the rooftop. Cassie's trembling hand, Liam's smirk, the server's blood, Jake's escape, and that photo, my past circling back like a vulture. I was winning, but at what cost? The office was a glass fortress, Apex's logo glowing in the lobby. I stepped inside, the silence a balm after the gala's noise. My assistant, Tara, was waiting, a folder in hand. "Morgan deal's prepped," she said, her smile warm. "You okay, Ellie? You look—" She trailed off, eyeing my torn dress, my bandaged hand. "I'm fine," I lied, taking the folder. "Let's get to work." But as I walked to my office, the weight of the night settled in. I'd dodged a takeover, a blackmailer, a journalist, a fire. I'd planted seeds of doubt, left proof on the table, watched Cassie falter. But the threats weren't gone. Jake was out there, Liam was scheming, the breach was still active, and that photo, my secret exposed, was a warning. Someone knew me, the real me, and they weren't done. I sat at my desk, the city sprawling below, and opened my clutch. The envelope stared back, unopened. I didn't need to read it to know what it held. The truth, sharp and unforgiving. I tucked it into my drawer beside my father's old watch, a relic of time lost. The burner phone buzzed, a new message. "You can't hide forever, EH. I powered it off, my jaw tight. Let them come. I'd built this empire in the dark, I'd defend it in the light. The office was quiet, the hum of the AC the only sound as I leaned back in my chair, the city's pulse faint through the glass. The gala felt like a lifetime ago, though only hours had passed. My hand ached, the bandage stiff with dried blood. But the pain was grounding, a reminder I was still here, still fighting. I'd walked into Cassie's world tonight, a world that had never seen me, and I'd left it shaken. The envelope on the dessert table, the projector hack, Nathan's calculated madam, they were moves on a chessboard I'd been playing alone for years. But the game was changing, the pieces moving faster than I'd planned. I thought of Cassie, her trembling hand, her empire of lies cracking under the weight of a single word, proof. She'd built her life on stolen credit, on my silence, on the assumption I'd never step forward. Tonight, I had. Not with a scream, not with tears, but with a quiet power that hit harder than any tantrum. I saw her face again. The moment she realized I wasn't the sister she'd written off. It wasn't joy I felt, not triumph. It was relief, like exhaling a breath I'd held for decades. My parents, too, had felt the shift. Margaret's pearls clutched like a lifeline, Richard's frozen stare as he faced the contract he'd forged. They'd spent my life reducing me to a footnote, a practical girl who didn't need attention, who didn't need anything. They were wrong. I needed truth, and I'd clawed my way to it, building Apex from a laptop in a studio apartment, while they toasted Cassie's every milestone. They hadn't seen me then, they saw me now. But the cost was heavy. Jake's knife, the server's blood, the burner phone's photo. They were reminders that power came with enemies. Someone knew my past, my pseudonym, my moves. Was it Cassie, orchestrating a desperate counterplay? Liam gambling for a bigger piece of the pie? Or someone else, someone I hadn't seen, lurking in the blind spots of my empire? The breach alerts, the takeover plot, the blackmail. They weren't random, they were coordinated, a net tightening around me. I'd escaped tonight, but tomorrow would bring new traps. I opened my drawer, pulling out the sapphire ring I hadn't worn tonight, the one the server had recognized. It wasn't just jewelry, it was a key, a symbol of a network I'd built in secret, funding scholarships, startups, Dreams for people like her, people no one else saw. She'd called me ma'am, her whisper louder than Cassie's toast. That moment, fleeting as it was, reminded me why I'd started this, not for revenge, not for applause, but to prove that the invisible could change the world. Nathan's words echoed, "How long can you keep this up?" I didn't know, but I knew I wouldn't stop. The Morgan deal waited, a chance to double Apex's reach, to cement my legacy. Cassie's resignation would come, I was sure, her value misalignment, a polite exit from a stage I'd dismantled. Liam's pitch would fail, his ambition his own undoing. The journalist's phone was ruined, her story stalled, but Jake was still out there, and that photo, my signature circled, was a ghost I couldn't outrun. I stood, walking to the window, the city a canvas of light and shadow. I'd built this empire from nothing, from the ashes of a childhood spent in hand-me-downs and half-hearted apologies. I'd signed checks while they laughed, bought companies while they posed, reshaped an industry while they slept. They'd called me quiet, sensitive, forgettable. They were wrong. I was precise, relentless, unstoppable. The burner phone sat on my desk, its message a taunt, "You can't hide forever." I smiled, small and sharp. I wasn't hiding anymore. I was standing in the light, and it was blinding. Let them come. Cassie, Liam, Jake, the unseen puppet master pulling the strings. I'd face them all, not as the invisible sister, but as Eleanor Harper, the woman who owned the board, the game, the future. I slipped the ring onto my finger, its weight a promise. The vault in my apartment, locked and untouched, held secrets even Nathan didn't know. Contracts, recordings, a diary of every move I'd made since I was 18. If I fell, it would all come out. A tidal wave to drown my enemies. But I wouldn't fall. I'd built my own table, my own empire. And I didn't need their chairs, their toasts, their lies. The truth was mine, and I'd wield it like a blade. As dawn broke over San Francisco, painting the skyline gold, I turned back to my desk. The Morgan deal waited. The breach alerts would come again. The threats would multiply. But so would my moves. I was ready. The invisible sister was gone. In her place stood a queen, and this was only the beginning.